Call the meeting to order. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Is there anyone wishing to address the board? All right. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the October 3rd minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. No conflicts of interest to deal with this afternoon. And a motion for approval of the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And we are on to the reports of the president. Capital campaign. Shelley.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, members of the school board, for the opportunity to come and present to you today and give you an update as to where we're at in the capital campaign. The last couple of times that I've presented to you about the capital campaign, I've had to be a little quiet as far as where we were at in fundraising because we were in the silent phase. So I'm happy to be able to report now the public phase of the campaign. So just to revisit some of the main goals, that if we're successful in raising the funds that we are striving to attain, that in 5 years after this campaign has been realized, we'll be able to go back to our donors and say that because of the donations and the contributions of the campaign, that we're going to reach the goal of increasing our enrollment by 30% to 3,000 students, by increasing the number of degrees conferred through Southeast Tech, either through an AES diploma or certificate program by 50%, and to double the student diverse population from 10% to 20%. And we well are on our way to that goal, as this year we are at 12% in our student diverse population, up from 10% last year. So on September 13th, in coordination with Southeast Tech's 50th anniversary celebration, we held a press conference to announce that the capital campaign had reached its halfway point, and we are at a little over $3 million in our capital campaign. This includes all the fundraising activities of the foundation to date included in that campaign. So it was a wonderful announcement. It was very well attended by foundation board members and council members of the city of Sioux Falls. So we received great coverage off of that event, and it was a very exciting time for the foundation to make that public announcement. And we've been working very hard since the day that we did make that public announcement to continue the momentum of the campaign. One part of that campaign, I think, was a very historical moment in the campaign and worthy of highlighting, because it's the first time that Southeast Tech has received an allocation from the city of Sioux Falls. So it's very, I think, telling to the great work that we put forth in the capital campaign, in the work that we're presenting to industry partners, that the city of Sioux Falls also sees themselves as an industry partner wanting to participate in our capital campaign. So it was Councilmember Christine Erickson that brought that amendment forth, and it passed 8-0. So it was a unanimous decision to pass a $100,000 amendment for the year 2019, and hopes with the opportunity that we will be able to go back in future years to continue on with allocations throughout the 5-year plan that we have through the capital campaign. And just recently, last week, we were able to talk about that gift on the Mayor's CityLink program to share about what the campaign covers and what it will do for our workforce and why the city decided that they needed to be a partner in that. So it was a great opportunity and a big highlight for us in the campaign. So to date, we're at a little over $3.5 million secured, and we have a little over $2.2 million in pending asks, with a whole list of other industry partners that we have not made asks yet to, but we have a plan to reach by the end of December. So you can see that we are well on our way to reaching our goal of $6.2 million that will include the vet tech program if we're successful. Any questions?
Any questions for Shelley?
No, you've done a fabulous job, and I saw your city link with Council Person Erickson. You did a super job. You've just been out everywhere, so keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shelley. May I have a motion to acknowledge the report, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Lon Hurd.
Good afternoon, President Alberty, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to give a short update on apprenticeships at Southeast Tech. In the last year, we have been very busy in developing and cultivating apprenticeships, and if you remember earlier, I had presented on a pre-apprenticeship that we had done in cooperation with the AGC, and that pre-apprenticeship program was very successful. If you recall, we started with 10 high school students from the area. We finished with the same 10 students, and I think anytime you're talking about 100% retention with high school students, you can chalk that up as a win. So we were very happy to see that. Excuse me. I'm also happy to announce that we are right now in the planning stages of not only continuing that into a second year, but expanding that. I'm working with, again, the AGC and expanding into the heavy highway division of the AGC. So the subject matter will be slightly different this coming summer than what it was last summer. But again, we think that will open up the opportunity to, more contractors, obviously moving into a different branch, and as an extension from that, more students. And so we're very excited to see how that goes, how that expansion turns out, and what opportunities that we can provide to those high school students in the area. We got great feedback. We had a culmination event just before our classes started this summer. Was actually a very fun event to take part in. The contractors were very enthusiastic. We had some great comments from students, from mentors, and from contractors. So really pleased to see how that goes again. We also are operating, we're in a second year of operating a carpentry apprenticeship, and this in partnership with the Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire. The home builders have been great partners on this. This again started with a grant that we applied for and received, a federal grant administered through the State Department of Labor, and then partnering with the Home Builders Association. And we had a very good first year. Unfortunately, our recruitment for the year didn't go as well. We had 4 new students start this year. We're already having meetings on strategies and methods to improve that for next year. We think one of the challenges that we have run into is that recruiting season for that program is in the early spring, because that's when contractors are hiring, and that's when we need to get those students connected with their prospective employers. The problem with that is that then we kind of suspend that over the summer. And so we have some loss in that time, in that gap in our program. And so we're looking at closing that gap and using some different strategies to have those students have more and more higher quality contact with our instructor, with their program, and with their employers over those summer months. So we're hoping to close that gap in the very near future. We're working on that process right now. Our plumbing apprenticeship is slightly different than the others that we're running. This apprenticeship was brought to us. This was a previously existing program. It was a partnership among 3 different plumbing contractors at the time. there was some disagreement as to how that program should be run, and so 2 of the 3 contractors came to us, wanted to know if we would partner with them on this, and it's been a very good partnership. We've got 23 people in this apprenticeship. We're hoping that with some structural changes, we're going to be able to bring in some more contractors. What we're finding is that some of the smaller contractors would like to have the educational and the training opportunity. We have in the past been a little bit cost prohibitive to them, and so we've made some adjustments to that, and we'll be doing some recruiting among that group over the next year to try to start bringing some more of those folks in. We would like to be that source of training for a lot more of those contractors. We have a couple of the larger contractors in the area, and again, they've been really good partners, but we would like to get that opened up to where some of those smaller contractors that need to steepen that learning curve for some of their people can come in and rely on us to be that training source. So again, strategies in place for that. We'll be working on that over the next several months before next year's recruiting class. The newest of our apprenticeships is the dental assisting apprenticeship. Again, we've talked about that here at this meeting. We have 11 students in that. The classes for that started in August. The program is going very well. Very happy to announce that about a month ago, we were able to, we were donated equipment for 2 full operatories by one of the neighborhood dental offices. They were moving, and they made the decision to simply buy all new equipment for their new office, which certainly benefited us. That will be a tremendous help to our program. So we're moving forward with that. We have tremendous support for this program from the dental community. The Dental Association has been a great partner in this and has been helpful all along. We've got a highly qualified instructor for this, a young lady that is actually a hygienist. I'm also pleased to say she's one of ours. She came through our apprenticeship program earlier, and so she's very supportive, very enthusiastic about it. We have had such good support from the industry that we are now looking at starting an academic program for dental assisting, hopefully in fall of 2019. We will be taking an advisory letter to the State Board of Technical Education for the December meeting, alerting them that we will be bringing this forward, and then the prospectus will go to that board in the March 2019 meeting. I've had conversations with the association leadership as well as the local association. I'll be attending their meeting next week to answer questions about this and carry this proposal forward. So they're aware of it. An email to that group to 147 different dentists went out this week. So that word is out. I have started getting letters of support from that group. So I'm very optimistic that that process will go well, and that this time next year we'll be talking about that program itself. So are there any questions I can answer?
Questions for Lon? You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
I try to be.
Good things going on. I mean, all of that expansion of the apprenticeship programs, the dental programs, I mean, those are very, very positive things. So thank you.
Yeah, well, my pleasure, and thank you. It's obviously an area of focus at every level, state, local, national, and so we're trying to respond in every way that we can to those. So thank you for the board's support.
Very good. May I have a motion to acknowledge the report, please?
So moved.
One second.
Any discussion?
I would just add, we've talked about this numerous times here about how valuable it is to students to get them experience in like real world life experience in a job or a career. Sometimes, and I remember watching the news when they did a story on the construction, there were people who said, I found what I love, and there were people who said, I know I never want to do this again. And both of those things are so valuable to those 17, 18-year-olds who are really trying to decide what that path is for them. And so whether you get somebody that loves and is super passionate about what they're doing, or whether you get someone who says, hey, I learned a lot, and one of those things is it's not for me, both of those things carry so much value for that student. And so I'm so grateful that we have so many of those opportunities that students can kind of try things out and then decide from there whether to continue on that path or to shift gears and do something different. So I appreciate the work that you and your team are doing to make all of those opportunities possible for students to really engage and get a real world perspective before they invest a lot of time and energy and money, only to find out it wasn't really for them, so.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
President Alberty, members of the board. Last month, I think I presented in the dark, and that seemed to go pretty well. So if I can have Vicki hit the lights, maybe have a repeat performance. So.
She knows when to turn the lights
Yeah,
off.
she knows.
We
So.
talked earlier.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Good. Just briefly want to run through the first quarter financial results of where we stand through the end of September. Give you a little bit of information as we look at the different funds, what we're seeing in terms of revenue and expenditures and how we're tracking related to that. And I'm primarily focused on the post-secondary fund. Obviously, that's the biggest element of our operations out there. The other three enterprise funds are fairly small in comparison. So as you look at the first page of the finance report, it really is talking about cash balances and where we sit in the various funds in terms of cash as of September 30th. And I think a thing that's always important to point out as we look at this, you see it in another report that that I'm not presenting on, but in that consolidated report of trust and agency accounts, that's funds that we are holding out at Southeast Tech that haven't made its way to the district, to this report yet, and through the financial statement. So if you were to look at that consolidated report, there is in the EFT account, in the tuition and fees account, there's about $6.8 million or more that will be making its way into our accounts here. So it's a little bit of a timing difference. So it's really that funds that have come in during September that'll show up in the next month. I know for a fact because I did the transfer, so we moved $5.1 million here right at the end of the month. So just to kind of keep that aware that why you...
I mean, for everyone watching at home.
I don't know if I can make it any bigger.
Yeah.
It is difficult
Okay.
to see.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
a little bit.
Much
yeah.
better.
Thank you.
Sure. So when you, like I said, you're seeing as of the end of September 30th, general ledger's showing $3.6 million in cash. That's more than we need to operate in cash flow. There's funds sitting in a savings account that gets moved as it's needed. Like I said, at the end of September, or at the end of October, we moved $5.1 million down. So we're cash flowing our operation in what we're doing. We adopt a pooled cash concept, so there's not a couple checking accounts out there for the food service fund and the child care fund. They're sitting there with negative balances. So it's in aggregate, we're sitting in a positive position. Next page is the one we really tend to focus on the most. And just to mess everybody up, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way back up towards the top. But this is a summary of the post-secondary fund. It aggregates all of the 2,000 plus accounts that we have and that we operate through into some major types of categories. But what I really wanted to point out on the bottom of the page, when you think about where we're at in terms of the first quarter, and this is leaving off a couple of the percentages, so it didn't quite read. But as you look at it, you look and we see that we're at 21.06% for the first quarter in terms of our overall expenditures. Think about the first quarter, you would kind of anticipate to be roughly at 25%. And our operations track fairly consistent as we move across the year, and as we progress, you will see that type of movement. Some of the things where it can fluctuate when you look at that total is in our capital. That can kind of have a lot of variability to it, but in this case, we're on track expenditure-wise in comparison to our budgets and where we think we're going to be. Last year at this time, which it doesn't show on this report, but we were at 20.02% of budget. So this year, we're at 21.06 in budget. So pretty much same in terms of being on track. But the other piece of it is as I look at that budget, how are we tracking against what we had planned on expending during the course of the year? So when you look at the two columns on the expenditure side, and you start off with the regular salaries and you look and you can compare between the 2.5 million, looking at that column, that's last year through the first quarter, the 2.6 is where we're at this year. You would expect our salaries to be up. Our staffing levels are relatively the same, but we did have some salary adjustments in the year, so you would expect to see that move forward a little bit. The other categories are pretty much tracking right on with a few noted exceptions. So we get into professional services, we spent a little more through the first part of this year as compared to where we were last year. Some of that's tied to the vice presidents of academics search. We incurred some expenses related to that. Some of it's tied to the 50th anniversary and some of those celebration events. There's some things relating to staymates as we move across and implement some of those things in terms of our branding and our webpage design. And then there's some of those carryover costs for that foundation with the third-party consultant and helping in that fundraising mechanism. So when you look at professional services last year to this year, we've expended more than $149,000 more this year as compared to last year, but it's purposeful. There was a design behind it. It wasn't like we were caught off guard or there was a surprise related to that. When we get down into the next category that has some of those kind of differentials, we're looking at repair and maintenance, increase from 142 to 245,000. A lot of that, again, is tied to maintenance contracts on equipment in our LPN program and some of those simulators. We bought extended service contracts to maintain that equipment, one, and to ensure that it's fixed in a timely manner, so those guys aren't fighting with me on repair and maintenance budget. We've kind of already got it in place. The other part of it is in some software maintenance, ongoing software costs, and the majority of that increase is related to what we're doing with our printing solution. With that new contract, we implemented a software, and I think we talked about this before, where we could actually go back and charge the students as opposed to just having an open forum and an open use. So at the end of the day, as we look at that program, it's kind of winding up being relatively the same in terms of revenue and expense. We're not generating a lot of revenue. So in effect, what we did is we put a governor on the students' printing activities, kind of drove down that utilization, but we also have a cost savings with that because we're not paying per click quite as much, and I think we'll have a longer utilization of our equipment. So overall, that's been a good program to implement, so we will continue to monitor that and watch that. Supplies and materials, there was some changes as well, an increase of $191,000 over this time last year. That's kind of all over the board. There's a lot of different categories that roll up into supplies and materials. So we're seeing some increase in software. That's in a variety of different categories and cost centers. Some in ERICS mostly, so it's either related to running the campus as a whole, or it's related to software associated with the laptop programs that we're actually using in instructional programs that are being made available to students. So that's where most of that increase is related in those accounts. Food purchases, we're a little bit up on that, but you also see that in the food service fund on the revenue side of it's up. So some of that has to do with just the timing of billing for some events related to AAR and Jumpstart. Got the billings out a little bit early, so the expense hits the other fund a little bit earlier.
Rich,
Yeah.
on some of those, like the repairs, maintenance, and supplies and materials, will those areas even out as we get into the second and third quarter?
Yeah. We'll start they're a little bit of a front load.
Right.
So when you look at the repair and maintenance, we're 45%. Going back to my kind of argument about the 25, a lot of that is those repair and maintenance contracts. So you're paying for a 12-month window up front, right?
Okay.
So that'll smooth that out, and that's what a lot of we're seeing in the R&M stuff, it's all those service contracts, not a lot of R&M non-service contract related. So that will smooth out. Supplies and material overall is in line. We're at 27.81%. It's just that we're starting in a little bit earlier in this year in some of those expenditures and those purchases, more being upfront. So the software that I talked about, that's an upfront cost. That's not going to be a repetitive thing that you're going to see duplicated in the second, third, and fourth quarters. Classroom supplies, which is one of the categories, that is up a little bit. We'll see if that carries over, if that's just a cost of doing business as the things that we need are going up, or is that gearing up earlier in the semester and buying more stuff, and then that carries you through into that. So we'll kind of watch that and track that over the next couple months. Another thing that drove the supplies up were computer equipment purchases, non-capitalized. So those are the items that are under $1,000. That again is an upfront type of purchase. We buy those computers right away. It's not something you see repeating throughout the term. So,
Thank you.
Question on collectible tuition fees.
Yeah.
So did we actually collect on
Yeah.
people we had already?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, what happens, the way that we monitor that and the way that we track it and report it, and it always looks goofy, is as students age in their accounts, and as they get from 30 to 60 to 90 to the point where we send them off to collections. So at 120 days is when we are saying, okay, we're done, we're going to send your account to a collection agency to start those procedures. It's at that point in time that we send them to the collection agency. We change their category from an active student to a collection type of student. We recognize that bad debt expense. Well, what happens in this first term is we're picking up some of that spring term, summer term that have moved into collections. Well, I want to go back to school. I need to get in. Oh, wait, I got to pay my bill. So it actually flips around the other way. And I think if we were to go back and look at some prior years, we probably see a similar occurrence in it. So people are getting current. So what happens is we move them out of that collection status. They're either setting up payment plans, we pull it back, and now they're going back into an active student status, and we do the calculation analytically. So we see that change, and now that's what creates that credit in there. So I wouldn't necessarily say we've collected it all,
Right.
but I would say that they've come back into, hey, I'm going to meet my obligation. I'm either on a payment plan or I have paid some of those accounts.
And it's 4 times better than it was last year.
Yeah. So either it's a mix of the population, or we had a larger percentage in collections at the time. So there's going to be some movement in that account. So we'll wait and see how we end on the end of the year. So we'll track it as we go. So a good observation as it relates to that. On the equipment side, when you get down below that and you look at the equipment, a little bit up on the actual equipment we're up 62,000. Some of that's a timing issue. We're a little bit earlier in getting some of the Perkins funded items bought, some of those bigger pieces of equipment, and have paid for them that would have come later in the year, in prior years. So that's why you're seeing an increase in that. Technology, we're up, same type of thing. You're buying that stuff at the beginning of the year. So, and there was more planned to be bought. So that's what's going on in that account as well. Any questions as it relates to the post-secondary fund? I'll get up to the revenue here, but on the expense side of it. Yeah. The revenue side, tracking a little bit differently there. When you look at where we were at on tuition and fees last year and our different revenue sources, we were at 38.85%. This year at 34.61%. Now, part of that percentage difference can be tied to the fact that we're comparing the budget. So last year, we were outpacing the budget. We had ratcheted our budget back, and then we started to see growth in our tuition and in our revenue. Now, you're getting the flip side of the coin. We increased our revenue estimates coming into this year, and we're off to a little bit slower start. And we've talked about that. When you look at just raw credits, we're probably off about 1%. So that has a compounding effect. It's something that on my meter of concern to panicked, I'm still just in the concern stage. I haven't moved to panicked or resigned yet, but so it'll be something that we continue to watch and continue to observe. I think another thing that comes into play is there's a pretty concentrated effort to get students moved out. So as we start to look at our shrink over the next several months, I suspect that that'll start to move up, and we'll start to get a little bit closer to where we think we're going to be. So 1% makes us pay attention, makes us look at it, but it's not put on the life jackets quite yet. So the rest of our revenues are tying out exactly where they were last year. The state is predominantly the state aid that's coming into that. First payment's always an estimate, and then they wait until we actually file our tuition from the last year in August to redo that calculation. As I look at where we're at in budget, we're going to come in a little bit less than what we projected. Again, not alarming, but a little bit less than what we had planned. So we're going to have to watch our revenues. The expenditure side we have down. We're tracking with our budget. Revenues were a little bit behind. So if that continues as we go into the next months and we look at it in the second quarter, then we may need to make some decisions about how we proceed and finish out the rest of the fiscal year. So, but overall, no surprises from my perspective. Yep. I'm not going to say too much about the other funds. Bookstore fund, a little bit down in the revenue when you look at that, but it really, I think, is again related to a concentrated effort to provide alternative mechanisms to purchasing new textbooks. So it's looking at expanding used textbooks options, textbook rentals. We're doing a little bit with ebooks, not a lot, but a lot in the textbook rental, which is kind of a pre-buyback, so they get a reduced rate on that. So you're seeing a little bit less on the revenue. When you look at the expenditure side, a little bit higher. That's probably loading up with some inventory, just a timing difference of when we're paying bills. But the differential, when you look at the 506, that was revenue over expenses last year at this time. We're at 353 this year. That differential is really tied into the expenditure side of it. So it's looking at that supplies for resale type of account. Food service, I kind of talked about that. You see that increase in food expenditures I talked about in the post-secondary fund. Well, you see on the revenue side here, there's an increase of $15,000. That really is related to a couple events that we held in terms of Jumpstart and AAR events. So we're really selling to ourselves, but that revenue is starting to come through. When you look down in the bottom line, you know, it's a little bit concerning when you see that $47,000 deficit in there. But again, remember, because of the timing difference, this is only reflecting August revenues. It doesn't reflect September's because there's a delay of a month in there. So if memory serves, I think our September sales were right in that $42,000 range. So that helped narrows it in. That helps put it in line with what we were intending to subsidize that fund for in FY19. So again, we'll continue to watch that and see how that tracks. October, as I look at the daily sales, have been better than where they were last year. There seems to be greater utilization of the food service, and our revenue is seeming to hold on a daily basis. December is going to be a killer. You know, we don't have students around, and then it'll pick back up again in January, February, March. May, June, July will be killers. So, but we'll continue to watch. Childcare has the same issue on the revenue delay. Again, it's only reflecting August, which would have a limited utilization of the services. So next month will reflect that full utilization of the services. So we should start to narrow some of that gap when they're sitting there with 32,000. That'll close up, and that'll be much smaller. It's just that timing difference that happens with it. So again, all in all, kind of a benign report. Not a lot of surprises from my perspective, not a lot of unexpected things, but a few things I wanted to point out to you in some differences on a very high level. So any specific questions?
Questions for Rich? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, may I have a motion to acknowledge the report, please?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. We're on track, things are good, nothing, no red flags, so we're,
Well, the audit's coming. That'll be in a couple months. We can talk about that. But no.
okay, we'll see how that goes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Anything else to come before the board? Nothing? Okay. Then may I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.